so it's Wendy Vecchi, obviously, so that must be me. My archival inks, I had originally 12 colors, and now I added 3 more for the show. We added tea rose, we added buttercup, which I like to call suck it up buttercup, and sky blue. So those are my archival colors. So archival inks are permanent and waterproof when they're dry, and that's really the benefit of them. Okay. So the next thing I did with Ranger was embossing powders. So I'm going to show you this on this, and that'll be this row right here. So these are the 9 colors that we have right now. So the new colors for the show match the 3 new inks. So we have tea rose embossing powder, sky blue, and then suck it up buttercup. So when we talked about the embossing powders, the guys are like, tell us what you want. And I said, well, first of all, I want mine ground super fine detail because I like that when you stamp your image, there's no halo around it when you color it. So that was perfect. So they said, the next question is, do you want matte or do you want shiny? And I'm like, yes. And they're like, no, one or the other. And I said, well, but sometimes I want one, sometimes I want the other. And they're like, you can't do that. So I said, what is the benefit of each one? And they said, if you do a matte embossing powder, it's always going to be matte. There's no product you can add to make it shiny. So I'm like, well, I don't like that. So they said, but if you do a shiny embossing powder, you can figure out a way to make it matte. And I'm like, that I can do. So the next row, what you'll see here is completely different. So you'll see that I mix my embossing powders, 50-50 ratio, with Ranger's Frosted Crystal Embossing Powder.
Wow.
So what you're going to see here, it takes it from a really, really super shiny to a more matte finish, but it has a lot of texture in it. And it also seems to darken the color. So to me, that little jar of magic, the jar of frosted crystal, is it's an excellent product because it doubles your embossing paste color or embossing powder colors. So that's really fun. And you can see there's really a huge difference because it's frosted crystal. I didn't really expect it to darken the colors, but you can see that it does because they're on the same surface as the stars. So the next thing is when you think of embossing powders, you always think, okay, I can stamp an image and then emboss it and color it, okay? But there's so much more that you can do with that. Home decor is so popular right now, and so is altering things and mixed media. And this is a great way to customize your some products that you may have even had for a long time, like I did here. So I wanted you to know that embossing powders will work on glass. So if you look at the top left, that's Tim's corked vial, right from the package, and then covered with embossing powder. The second one is my Clearly for Art, which is my moldable plastic material, and again, that one has tea rose embossing powder on it. And these things will not chip off, and I'm going to tell you how to do that. So this is fern green, the next one, and on the bottom you can see fern green embossing powder. This one is my Art Parts material, which starts out as kind of a craft colored product and covered with embossing powder. This sample here is really cool. This is Ranger's texture paste right from the package, so it's white. And while it was wet, I sprinkled on the embossing powder and then blasted it with the heat tool. So that powder is actually cooked right into the paste, so it's really cool. You know, it's really nice to have a raised sentiment or something. I think it makes a huge impact. The next one is one of Tim's metal pieces from Ideology. So that's what it looks like from the package. And here it is covered with Suck It Up Buttercup. I know, it's just, so it's things you've had for a long time, you can coordinate now for any project, so it's really fun stuff. You can die cut it and just do sections of it. You can cover a whole sheet with embossing powder, use your punches on it, and make your own little embellishments with it. This is a new product that I have, it's called Matte Minis, and these are little laser cut matte board pieces, and they take embossing powder really well, so that's Orange Blossom. And then this one is Tim's letterpress right from the package, and here it is covered with embossing powder. So a lot of different options, and there's a lot more than this, but I have 9 powders, so I wanted to show you 9 colors. But you can also do it on chipboard, grunge board, just plain old cardstock. It's just a really fun way to change the things you have. So those are the little samples. So I wanted to take it a little bit further and show you what else you can do with this. So this is just a glass leftover jar from a honey that we got in a gift basket. So this is covered with my embossing powder. So the key to doing this is you want to use the archival ink as your base. So use your blending tool, add archival ink to the surface, and then sprinkle on your embossing powder. And the archival ink will hold it securely, just kind of cooks it right onto the surface. which is really cool. Yeah, when I first started, I thought, okay, embossing powder, embossing ink, those two should work together. And what happened was when I put the embossing powder on and blasted it with the heat tool, it worked. And then I noticed a little crack in it, and I thought, well, I'll just heat it again with the heat tool. And what happened was, when I grabbed my heat tool, the crack was bigger, and I just stood there and waited, and then the crack got bigger and bigger, and the whole thing peeled off. So I figured out, okay, I still want to do this, I have to have another plan, and Archival ink works perfectly. So these pieces have been shipped all over, and they are perfectly fine. It's actually like cooked onto the surface. Okay, so that is on glass. And I'll pass it around so you guys can see how it's on there. This is Tim's cute little clock. Same principle with this. I use Archival ink, tapped it on with the blending tool, and you have to work in sections on this thing. Sprinkle on your embossing powder, and then it's on metal.
Do you color match, so you'll use the coordinating Archival with?
I do.
Okay.
I do. 99% of the time. Sometimes I don't. So
Okay.
I like to see what else is going to happen. I also have a wood frame here. So this was just a basic black wood frame. This is what it started out as. And same thing with this one. I worked on one side at a time. So I took my tree branch Archival ink, tapped it on just one section, and then I sprinkled on my tree branch embossing powder. And before I heated it, I like to take my finger and just kind of wipe off some certain sections so that it looks a little more vintage. You don't have to do that. If you want it perfect, you can do that. But I really like the kind of more worn effect. That's more my style. So that's why you see the little bits of black peeping out through here though. And you can see on wood again, it's perfectly on there. This has been shipped all over again too. And it's actually like cooked onto the wood.
And you even did the spoon.
Yeah, so I did. This is a little metal spoon, so that's also done with the embossing powders. This is my Clearly for Art that I showed you on the sample. So so it's flexible, and but the embossing powder won't chip off. This is actually Tim's little tattered florals that I die cut from foam core, and that's covered with embossing powders, so that works. And there's the letterpress again. So yeah, it's so much fun. Once you start looking at this stuff, it's like, oh my God, I'm gonna do everything. That jar was actually in the trash and I had to dig it out. So this is on art parts, and if you look at the little bricks, I have a brick stencil, and I wanted a way to have a brick colored embossing powder. So I thought, ooh, I should have had one, but then I thought, no, we have enough colors, we can make our own. So what I did was, I started with red geranium embossing powder, and I added an equal amount of orange blossom. So I thought those two would make a nice color. Well, it still needed a little bit of something. So I added in some watering can, just a little bit, and then I used the magic bottle of frosted crystal. So the effect is this. So it actually looks like authentic brick. And it's on there, you've done the tag, it's not going to chip off. And it's really cool. So this is what it looks like in the container. You guys can look at that if you want to. This is what it looks like in the container. So you can actually see, you can see red geranium in there, you can see some orange blossom in there. The little dark spots are going to be the watering can, the powder. And then the white that you see is actually the frosted crystals. So normally when I do it, I do a 50-50 ratio. So I took 1 scoop of this, 1 scoop of this, so I took 2 scoops of that. And then I just sprinkled in a little bit of the watering can. And you can kind of adjust it if you wanted it to be redder, just add a little bit more red geranium. So it's really, that was really fun. So I have a couple more options I want to try too when I have a few minutes.
Wendy, did you say you did that with a stamp or a stencil?
What?
The brick.
That's a stencil.
A stencil.
That's a stencil.
Okay.
Okay, so that is that. So I wanted to show you too how the faux granite work technique works, because that's really fun. So I'm going to use my new matte minis here. Like I said, I normally choose the same color. Sorry guys. I'm going to choose the same color ink and embossing powder, so I use cornflower blue. So originally when I started playing with this stuff, I wanted to make an enamel accent. So if you just ink your surface with the Archival ink, and this is a 2-part flower pot, so I only have to dip the bottom half, but it's going to be covered up on the top. And there's my embossing powder stuck on my surface. Now because I like vintage, I like to take it and just kind of wipe the edges off so it looks like it's been worn, but you don't have to do that. Okay, and then I'm just going to blast it with the heat tool. This is where you really appreciate Ranger's heat tool because it's so quiet. This guy is loud, but it works really, and it's really fast, so for demos it's really good. you can see I have this beautiful blue kind of enameled pot. So if your customers like bright colors, you can stop right there. I like, again, more vintage, so I'm going to add some potting soil ink to this. And this is optional, but I like it. This is also another way to change your embossing powder colors after it's already been cooked. If you go over it with potting soil, potting soil will work with any of the colors to tone it down. I thought it would be tree branch, but it's really potting soil is the one that's perfect for every color. So I'll just do part of it so you can see how it changes the color. And if I heat set that, then that's going to be permanent on there. So I'll just kind of go over the whole thing. You could just do the edges if you wanted to. And I don't dry this ink, and I'll tell you why. When I go over this with my Glacier White, some of that ink is going to be absorbed into the white, so it kind of tones it down. It's not so stark. So if you had Snowcap White pigment before, Glacier White is the same thing. So the pigment line has been rebranded. So this is the new one, exactly the same ink as before. So now I'm just going to take my spatter stamp on here, and I have a full granite ware. So I'll just give this a quick blast, and then that white ink is permanent on there. So that is exactly how I did the other pieces. And then I would finish it off, obviously, with the extra little piece on top. I'm not going to make you watch that, but then this would fit on the top of there, and there's my little dimensional flower pot.